In this video, we are going to be upgrading some parts on the rear differential of my Drift Mustang. With this slick cover from UPR, I'm going to talk to you all about the cover, why I picked this one out, some ideas I have for adding a temp sensor in the bottom, and first and foremost, why am I even doing this? Well, I am because of what happened last time at the last Drift event. Check it out. At the last Drift event, everything was seemingly going great, but when we got underneath the car to change a set of tires, I noticed the diff was getting way too hot and was actually puking fluid out of the breather. No good. So based on what I saw at the last Drift event, I want to do everything I can to make this differential survive. Now, it's an 8.8 with a Torsen in it, which isn't totally ideal for drifting, but it's what came with the car, and I'm not going to rip the Torsen out just to weld it up, because the Torsen kind of works fine. Initially, I was hoping for more fins, and you can get them from Ford Racing with more fins to potentially add, the benefit of some cooling, but the price goes through the roof. These things from UPR, super solid construction, cast aluminum piece, but in addition to that, very affordable. So like the price point on these, you don't feel like you're getting gouged. Full of key features that are pretty cool. The biggest one obviously is you have these supports for your carrier bearing caps. So what you can do is you put ever so slight amount of pressure. This helps, keep everything stiff and prevent flexing. So that's a plus. Obviously this thing is way thicker and beefier than the stock just like stamped steel plate. So that adds some rigidity to your rear end. You get another fill location, but what's really slick is you get a drain down here, because on a Ford 8.8, the only way to drain the diff is to pull the whole cover off, and you don't want to do that once you put this on. So you have a really cool little drain right down here, which I may use for something else, and I'll tell you about that in a second. What I'm going to use this for is I'm going to try and hook up a temp sensor so I can monitor the temperatures this time out and see what they're like. And if they are crazy through the roof, I may actually look into doing a diff cooler. And if I do that, I basically have like a supply and return loop with this new setup right here, which is super cool. Big thing is to look at basically the distance, like because I have this aftermarket panhard bar and I've also got this brace right here. It's going to be super tight. Chances are I'm going to have to drop the panhard bar out of the way, because even though I think I will have enough clearance, you do have to kind of snake this around your ring gear. It isn't too hard. You just undo the bolt there and this will drop down. I like to go around first and just undo everything by hand. You'll see me with a 3/8 drive ratchet and a 1/2-inch socket. I'm just knocking those 10 bolts loose. Then go ahead and carefully drain out all the fluid from the differential. For some reason, I did not get that on film. And then here what I'm doing is finally dropping the panhard bar out of the way. And then with an air tool, just going in and cleaning up that mating surface. Yeah, and that's what you're looking for, something like that. Again, we're not using anything super abrasive here. We don't want to cut in. These machine marks are from before, they're not from me. You just want to knock any of that old sealer off and then hit it with some brake clean or something. Now we're going to test fit the diff cover. Got the panhard bar out of the way, and we'll see if it fits. I think that this is way taller than this. It's really not. If you like actually lean down and look and put a straight edge across here, it's maybe 1/8 of an inch taller. So if you're worried about clearance, you should be fine. I did back these off, which these might actually get in my way, and I'll have to adjust those in, but I don't want them to hit anything when I'm tightening everything up. I'll come back later and tighten those down. Even with those backed all the way out, you still got plenty of room. So I'm just holding this in place right now, but you've got at least 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch there. So no fitment issues if you've got an aftermarket panhard bar or a bigger panhard brace. Just make sure this thing is totally free of any grease. Get yourself a rag, because the last thing you want to do is install this and then have a leaking diff cover. That's the worst. If you're curious of what these are right here, when you thread those in, they thread these in, okay? Now your stock cover, it doesn't have anything like that, right? It's just a cover. But when you thread those in, what happens is it comes over here and it puts a tiny bit of preload onto carrier bearing caps. So these are your bearing caps, which are obviously torqued, and it just puts a little bit of pressure on there just to prevent deflection. That's all they do, and you don't want to push them down too hard because you can actually mess them up. Just on there to keep them still. And the sticker cover also adds rigidity just to the whole housing.
Permatex actually makes a specific RTV for diff oil. It comes in like a green little container pouch. I like this stuff a lot. I've had really good luck with it, and you'll see me go around, try and do it all in one shot. You go around the entire perimeter and then make sure you put circles around all of the bolt holes. You basically install it finger tight, you let it sit for an hour, and then after it's sat for an hour, you come back and torque it, and then you gotta wait 24 hours before you fill it. Here's me putting it into place. I go back and forth on whether I recommend putting the gasket maker on the diff cover or directly onto the axle itself. If you put it on the axle itself, it's easier to line up the diff cover the first time and you don't run the risk of kind of smearing it, but it's a lot easier to also put it on the diff cover while it's on your workbench and you're not laying up under the cars. That's totally up to you. Just take your time if you do it the way that I just showed you, and then run these bolts down finger tight. Like I said, you got to wait an hour, and then you come back and torque them at 24 foot-pounds.
This next part is going to appear weird, and let me show you why. So basically, once you tighten the inner part, you've got to tighten this jam nut. But the problem is the way that this one is built from UPR, it's a counterbore hole. So you can either use a pass-through socket, which this isn't, or you can modify a socket so you can hold the Allen still, because basically what you're going to do is you're going to tighten the Allen, and then you've got to tighten this jam nut, but you don't want the Allen to turn because that will change your preload. I've got some of these like cheapo Husky or whatever, who even knows who these are from, Quinn. I'm just going to modify a socket and I'll show you how. I had this old nut laying around. I think I'm going to try and weld a nut to this, and maybe even I'll get one that I can fit with my crow's foot if I have the right size. So we went ahead and ground down the coating off of both the socket and the flange nut, and I think I've got it like perfectly aligned around there. So we'll go tack weld in place. Okay, here's my little cool tool. This will allow this to slide onto here so I can tighten and hold the inner portion in place, but I can also go use an 18mm crow's foot and a torque wrench and make sure everything is torqued correctly. We're going to run through this step by step. First thing, we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove these jam nuts. Just they're not in our way. Okay, that's step one. Okay, next we're going to run these down. This is what actually contacts. So I'm just running down until I feel them touch. And then, so they're both touching, just double checking. And then with your inch-pound torque wrench, you're just going to 60 inch-pounds, which is 5 foot-pounds. It's like nothing. Here we go. It's like nothing. Next, by hand, we're gonna go and we're gonna run these down, okay? What we're gonna do, and it's gonna be funky, we've got our torque wrench set to 35. We want the ability to tighten these without the inner part moving. So one of the other things I'm going to be doing, I know it's kind of hard to see here, but basically I'm going to be installing a catch can, and the point of this is going to be able to allow my diff to breathe, but not puke oil everywhere, and I'll be able to monitor it. So I've actually got a catch can that I've hidden inside the trunk up here, and I'll show you guys that in a second, how I've got that mounted. But for starters, I had to get rid of the silly little fitting so I could add a 90-degree fitting with the correct length barb, and then I'm gonna thread that into the axle, and I'll show you that here in a second. So that was the fitting that was coming out. The problem is it's literally the barb part that you connect the hose on right here is so small you can't even get a hose clamp on there. So I'm gonna go with the 90-degree elbow, and then I've got all this room to attach my hose to. Add this in, then I can point this in the right direction away from the exhaust and hook up the hose to go to my catch can. Now you gotta leave enough slack here because remember the rear end's gotta go up and down.
Here I am with a step drill and some grommets, putting the final touches on this catch can. Everything's getting mounted and hidden up in the trunk. This is gonna allow my diff to breathe, but also allow me to monitor the level. If I'm pushing fluid out, I can keep an eye on it. It's a good idea. Now that we've addressed the diff cover itself and also allowing the diff to breathe, you see me inside the car. The reason I'm inside the car ripping my dash out is because I'm actually going to add in a differential oil temperature gauge. I've already got Pro Sport gauges in the car, and they're really easy to daisy chain extra gauges to. So I'm pulling everything apart so I can add another gauge so I can monitor temperatures out of the differential. If it becomes a problem and I need to add a cooler, this is the only way I'm going to know. So it's not very hard. I've got other videos that show you how to pull apart your dash, or just hit me up in the comments and I can explain how you can do something like this. The only thing that makes this a little bit more difficult than a standard gauge installation is that you do have to lengthen the wiring harness, because you've got to run a temp sensor back of the differential all the way up to somewhere where you can see it inside of the car. So you'll see me here lengthening the wires. You've got to do that both for the power wire in my case and also for the sensing line that goes to the actual temp sensor itself, which we are going to mount in the drain location of the differential cover. This is your friend right here for sure. Pick yourself up one of those off of Amazon and it'll hold everything in place. Just take your time because these wires are super thin. It looks really good. You know, like it blends in, it's strong. The only thing I recommend doing is I use electrical tape on the end because it kind of starts to fray when you pull it, is you can use heat shrink, but I forgot to put the heat shrink on, so it'll be fine. And I'll show you where I'm gonna push it through in the back, and then I think I've got plenty of length to get this thing up to the front. We've got our 1/4 NPT by 1/8 adapter, and we're just tightening down this fitting. I use some of the Permatex on here, gasket maker. Let it set up like they say in the instructions for about an hour. And now we're just tightening it down. Honestly, the other nice thing about these Pro Sport gauges is the sensor is not super long. So see how this thing, it's not sticking out there, and I can run this all the way down, tighten it up, and I'm still gonna get fluid hitting that sensor. I'm not gonna bottom the sensor out inside and never get these threads tight. Okay, here we go. A lot of the newer track pack cars come with a diff temp sensor from the factory. So they recommend you just run it down finger tight, and then we're gonna wait for an hour. We'll come back and snug it up. I opted to go with some 75 140. Stuff is a little bit thicker than what I've used in the past, but I think it's gonna do really well. If you've never used these bags before, they are absolutely fantastic. Way easier to squeeze them in. These things are a freaking lifesaver, and a lot of them come with limited slip additive. Not that I need it because I have a Torsen, but back in the day, I used to have to add that stinky limited slip additive in here, but now they pretty much always have it in already. I'll spare you plugging in all the wires. I did that off camera, but now you can see me firing up the gauges for the first time. The awesome thing about these specific gauges is you can program in an alarm, and they're both digital and analog. And like I said earlier, you can daisy chain them all together. These things look sweet. I had a chance to go drive the car. It took a little bit for that gauge to read, and at first I was worried. I was like, did I not hook it up right? But eventually it did start reading temperature. I think what it is when you're just driving it nice and easy on the street, your differential doesn't get very hot, but as we know, when you take it out drifting or on a spirited track day or something like that, where it's prolonged high RPM, those temps will get very hot. So I think this video covers 3 big things you can do to really bulletproof your 8.8. So number 1, get a solid cover on there. Ditch these stamped steel covers. They're just a pain, especially if you want to service your differential and change the fluid regularly. Ditch that. I think the catch can is a great idea, especially if your car is like mine and the breather line got pinched, or it's just gonna leak and it's gonna get all over the bottom of your car. So that's a no-brainer. And then if you really wanna go the extra mile, add the gauge like I showed you, and now you can monitor temps. If we go out there and we see temps that are like 250, 260 plus, it's time for a diff cooler. But we'll never know unless we have the gauges installed. So we're gonna run with it like it is.
Let me know what you think. I think this is a way to bulletproof your Ford 8.8. Catch you next time. I truck and roll, out drifting.